Hi everyone, we are going to do a part 2 apparently. I felt a calling to go back over my bag of tricks, and in the very bottom, luckily when I flipped it over I saw it on the back, I found a note that I used when I first started doing my workings. So these are tips that I have for all of you. These are some conventional and some non-conventional ways of connecting with any force, really. I feel like I'm a little bit crooked, but I don't want to get too distracted on that. So, now, these are some both conventional and unconventional ways to connect with forces and spirits. This is the last time I'm going to adjust it. Okay. These are specifically for the Qliphoth, so I'm just going to address these, and you can translate them. You can use these for the Sephiroth. You can use these for getting to Olympus. You can use this for getting into wherever the fuck you want. I'm just going to move on. So the first thing that I noted that worked for me was using a reversed tarot card. This was before I found the Shadow Tarot and all that. Flipping over a tarot card and meditating either through it or on it, putting it underneath a mirror, like a black mirror, so that it becomes reversed in the mirror, things like that. This, while not being extremely overwhelming, aesthetically, psychologically, it can have a very triggering effect, especially if you know how to get into trance. I'm not going to cover getting in trance right now. I assume if you're this into magic that you're on a like underworld chaos current channel. Like I'm assuming you know how to get into trance. If not, tell me in the comment and maybe we'll schedule a session or something on me. So, reversing the card of the tarot that is associated with that path. Now, what about the spheres? You're going to take all four. You're going to take, if you're doing, where does Belphegor live? If you are in the Girion, then you will take all 4 sixes. And you can put all 4 sixes reversed on the outside of a black mirror or a pool of water or whatever it is, a sphere that you scry in. Good tip. It worked for me. It can work for you. The next thing, and keep in mind, these stack. A lot of people seem to think that, like on the channel before, I've showed a technique of creating a spell candle. Some people think that's the entirety of the process. That's just the candle. Okay? Calm down. You can get really, really, really into this. Just because you see someone suggest one thing about a working doesn't mean that's all they're doing. So, you can carve a candle with a sigil that you've made and a language you've created. This is 3 degrees or 3 layers on one fraction of the cake. This is just the candle, and you can already anoint it with a specific oil. It's a colored candle, perhaps, that relates to the sphere. You can add herbs, you can add stones, you can carve a personal handmade sigil, one that you've come up with yourself, and you can inscribe the candle in a language that you've made. There's so much intention in just that, in just the candle. Let alone, you can decorate, especially if it's like a pillar candle. You can color the top rim with a certain color, then you can do dots and lines and designs on that. You can write down the edge of the candle in a different color paint marker that's perhaps a flashing color to the actual candle wax itself. Again, folks, this is just like one thing, even though it's made of 3 layers. It's just one part of the working. This intention, this will, this focus is like a laser beam that will burn through this reality into the next one. Okay? The next tip is to use the Linda Florio shadow card. That is wonderful. The next thing is to, if you're so into Kabbalah that you know what world you're interacting in when you're in a sphere or a path, you can use the elemental implement associated with that. That's another thing. And that robe, if you're using a robe, can be, oils can be used on it. You can set it in a bag of herbs overnight. You can stitch sigils and incantations into it. It can be a certain color. Again, so much intention there. The staff or the wand or the athame. I'll take this is an athame that I use. This was, I'm not sure I can say where it came from. It was my grandfather's, and he got it from a very famous illusionist from, almost 100 years ago. If you think famous illusionist, it might be him. He was really good at breaking bonds. So, and that's the story. That's the story anyway. And sometimes a story is all you need to make something potent. But the thing that you can do with this is I bound it with a string that was made of a certain material that had meaning. And then what I do is I take a paint marker and I inscribe it specific to the working. It is also anointed with ginger oil because I use it for banishings. It smells very good. So, yeah, tend to use daggers for banishings, and if I do use a wand, it's very rarely. That's typically for like a conjuration, evocation, or like enchanting a talisman or something like that. At some point, you don't really need the tools anymore, but sometimes it's nice to have them around, and sometimes it does give you a little extra kick. Now, I have a specific blend of Qliphothic incense that is not with me right now. It is on I used to post an article, and then a bunch of drama happened, and I don't post articles anymore on there. But there's a specific incense that I make. You know what? I've got the box over here. We can just go over some of the ingredients. That could be fun. We don't talk about herbalism a lot on this channel. So let's get into a little bit of herbalism, shall we? I make my own incense for specific things. As I've mentioned before, I've showed my incense rack for drying that I'm potentially going to use for paper pulping at some point. But let's get into my Qliphothic incense. I say mine. It's a blend of something that Thomas Carlson suggested, as well as things that I liked, things that had meaning to me specifically. So first we have belladonna, Atropa belladonna. And because of the area that I live in, I can't always actually grow this to full fruit, so to speak. Sometimes I will just grind the seeds and add them. We have monkshood, Aconitum napellus, which a lot of these I have just the seeds and use just the seeds. There's something very magical about a seed. Some of them I grow, some of them I just use the seed. We have a cat, a neighborhood cat that is something of a familiar, and ever since they started coming around, I've been even more wary about growing poisonous herbs and things. So yeah, moving on. We also have some rue here, which I use. We have wormwood, which most of you know about rue and wormwood. You can keep a list of these items if you like. We have agrimony or agrimony. We have calamus powder, or Acorus calamus, or calamus. These plants all go by many names. And we have mugwort, which many of you know. It's kind of hard to read there, sorry. I'm putting a lot of these companies on blast here. Then we have henbane, which here is labeled Adjwain Kurasani powder. Then we have Datura seeds. This is one of the ones that I just use the seeds because it's poisonous and animals like it, and I like the animals in our area. I have some amber that I use as a binding agent. Sometimes I use amber, sometimes I use fly agaric, sometimes I use agar, sometimes I use fly agaric as well. That's Amanita muscaria for those of you who don't know. Then we have hemlock that I have dried. I collected from my area that I use. Then so a lot of these seeds like a sandy soil, so I keep a pack of sand here for when I'm growing inside. We have Angel's Trumpet essence tincture, which I also put in there. We have safflower. Man, that one's really hard to read. Safflower. And then we have this purple liquid candle dye that I use. In the process of this, I've got the Goetic Spirit Viewers sigil in this case of herbs. Perfect. So the process of this is mortar and pestle, athame, if you have to use an athame, whatever it is, whatever you have, use it to process these herbs down as much as you can. And then once they get to a uniform or semi-uniform thing, you are either, I have a press that is not in the box right now because it is drying. I have a press that I use that I made from it's a stick that's about this long, and I carved a cone into it, and then I have another stick. And when I get all of these herbs that are toxic, these are poisonous herbs, so when you burn them, either do not burn a lot of them or burn them in a ventilated area. Like these are toxic, like 100%. I might even have to add a disclaimer in the video somewhere. If you kill yourself, I guess I'll see you on the other side. I wish that you don't, but you know, shit happens. So I will, grind all that stuff up and then add the oils. And sometimes it takes just a couple drops of water as well. If you take a needle and poke it in the top of a water bottle, you can squirt it out drip by drip. Typically though, the oils and the candle dye that is liquid and very, very, very strong, it will stain your hands for days. One drop will stain your hand for like 3 or 4 days. You take all these, you mix them up, you make a mud essentially, and then you press it, and then you set them out to dry. And this can take, depending on how moist the final product is, it can take anywhere from a month to 3 months to dry. Most of it is going to dry to where it can burn in like a couple weeks. But yeah, I mean, obviously, like you can mix this stuff up and just put it on a dry incense brick, like a coal briquette or whatever, or you can put it on like a hot plate or whatever. It's going to be the same. Just keep in mind, a lot of these are poisonous. Like seriously, seriously, seriously poisonous. Like will kill you if you are not careful. So, you know, double rubber gloves, you know, maybe even a mask and ventilated area. Yeah. So that's the incense, which, as you can see, there's a lot of intention in that. So just the act of lighting this incense, a lot of times, the portal is open, we'll say. And that's the other thing too, is like people are so worried about like the right words and like the right symbols and all of that stuff. Never forget, we began in a much more shamanic capacity, which is not to say without formula, but it's much more wild. And because we began there, and because we repressed it, that's one of the best ways to get back in there. Just giving out mad tips, yo. Learn to find your fulfillment in frenzy as well. This book right here, Sideways, Seedways. This is really good if you need a reminder of how to lose yourself. We used to do it a lot as kids, and then we were told, no, stop, bad. Moving on. I'm just getting these things put away. So, learning to find yourself by losing yourself is a really good piece of advice, I think, for finding the underworld, right? I'm not going to close this because it's loud. So, moving on, we have a path working focus. So this can be anything from a sigil in the color. Okay, so let's give a demonstration. So I'll get the dry erase board, because why not? All right, so say we want to get into Nihimeth. We'll start slow. We'll start low. And you're like, oh, what's the right sigil? Make your own. Okay, so N. Three more lines for an A. Three more lines for an H. Now, is this the best sigil I could possibly come up with for this? No, I'm doing it right on the spot, and I'm in a very intellectual place right now. You're going to want to try to make it somewhat suggestive of the meaning of the path. So, N, A, H, E. Three more lines for E. Three more lines for an M. Let's add an O. A T. We got two lines for a T. There and there. And now an H. 1, 2, 3. Look at that. This is a sigil for Nihimeth. Now we can get fancy and we can add some circles and some more lines and do whatever. But the idea is to open your own gate, open your own portal, open your own world, open your own way. These spheres are collective, but we're all one slice of the pie. You can add some circles and make it real magical. How about that? Okay. That's one path working focus. Another might be the cards of the path. Another might be a specific mentality. It's been called, I think that like the formula of Babylon is one way to think about it. Doing something to shatter a personal ideal or a personal taboo, essentially. What's another path working focus? If the path is related to the growlers, for instance, you might have like a statue of Cerberus or something. You get my point. Something to focus on. Then we have a black mirror with the seal or sigil. I've done this before. Let's do it again. I'm going to grab my black mirror and I'm going to grab it's over here. Black mirror and grab a chalk marker. These things are great. Paint markers and chalk markers, dude, one of the greatest inventions ever. So, black mirror. Doesn't have to be massive, you know. It's not the size, it's how you use it. This is like a 3 or 4 inch black mirror here. Now, one thing that you can do, say you're gonna open Gamaliel. For some reason, the sigil of Lilith escapes me at the moment. So let's just make one real quick. Okay. Perfect Lilith sigil ink. Oh, hey, look at that. Wow. Gotta love it. Gotta love it. The last thing I did was this. And that sort of reminded me of Lilith's sigil. So, say we're going to open a path to Gamaliel. Here's a sigil for Lilith. And maybe that's the back of the mirror. And maybe what we'll do is maybe we'll meditate on that for a while. And maybe we'll do an invocation of Lilith, or an evocation. And then once she's here or there, we can flip it around, right, to where it's on the back. And then we can create or use another sigil for Gamaliel, right? And I'm just going to like cheese one real quick, and we're all going to act like this is fine. So make a sigil for, I'm literally just running through this, folks, for Gamaliel on the front. And then what you can do is you can put something on the edge, perhaps something like Liftwa Kashar Shakur Ha Gamaliel B'Shem Ha Lalit. Open up the black door of Gamaliel in the name of Lilith. You could literally write that on the edge. I think it's a tav, not a tet. That is a tav. Literally, like, just get into it, you know? Just get into it. So, yeah, and I have videos where I've shown pretty intricate, maybe there's only one video, intricate, like you can fill this thing up, like you can make it real fancy and crowded and stuff, but you know, you don't have to. Not everything always has to be done in a to the greatest extent that it can be done. That's what I'm trying to say. So, black mirror with seal or sigil. Great. Moving on. A voice recorder. So, you can have a voice recorder that is playing yourself speaking the incantation or whispering the incantation. For some reason, hearing my own voice puts me straight into trance. Maybe it does the same for you. Who knows? Maybe it's just a common thing. But also having a voice recorder present so that you can say what is being revealed, you know, psychologically, like, oh, or philosophically, or what is revealed astrally, what is revealed etherically. Like you feel like a whole new chamber of your being has opened or been ignited. The void has been vivified. And now that it, you know, whatever is happening, you can speak it so that you don't have to come back all the way down. Pen and paper to, if you need to sketch something, or like if you see a sigil, and like it's kind of hard to describe a sigil in a voice recording, so like have pen and paper if you need it. The N or the mantra of the spirit can also be written on the mirror, or it can be recited. You can have it playing as a recording in the background. The path visualizations. It helps to have memorized correspondences and things. Like if you're wanting to get into Thalmael, like you should know what sort of things to experience. For instance, you might see a Siamese twin, aborted child with the drama, wearing the drama masks. I could keep going, but that will suffice. The things, knowing what to expect, one, will help you know if you're in the right place, but two, will also help you bring it. One of the people that I talk to quite regularly asked me, like, so how do you initiate these visions that you get? And the short answer is, sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. There are, and I've talked about this before, pardon me if I'm boring you by repeating myself, but I tend to have two types of visions. One I think of as voluntary, and the other I think of as intrusive. And I'm not talking about like, oh, I had an intrusive vision, like when I saw that cute little squirrel, like I imagined myself squashing it. Like that does, unfortunately that does happen. I'm talking about like, I will be sitting there and the next thing, it's probably a symptom of some form of epilepsy. Anyway, the next thing I know, I'm somewhere. I have a video on here on this channel called The Sidereal Stranger that is a detail of one of these visions that I've had. This very remarkable, internally prophetic. It was a revelation to me. I digress. The path visualizations. Knowing what to expect can help prepare the path. And that is the voluntary vision. That is what I was explaining to the friend of mine, is you can initiate the vision. So like, imagine you're wanting to get into the Qliphoth. You can just imagine yourself as anywhere. Imagine that you're walking through a field and there is a windmill and there's a field of flowers, and there is a river, and you're just sitting in this place, and there's this beautiful river running through this valley, and there's this windmill. Now imagine, trigger warning, I guess, imagine that you walk over to this windmill and you spin it the opposite direction. Now the windmill's going counterclockwise. And when you do this, the sun reverses in the sky and starts to go back to darkness. And then once the moon rises, perhaps you pick up one of the river rocks and break it into something sharp and cut your hand and drip the blood onto one of the perfectly white tulips. And then the moon turns blood red, and the red light shines upon you, and it melts all of your flesh, melts you down to your bones, and then your bones catch on fire, and then you disintegrate into an ash, and perhaps your ghost comes out of that. You can explore that. That is in the Qliphoth. Where is it? We're not going to get into the specifics. It could be multiple places even. The idea is to break out of the box and do a little exploration. Having a like ambience or music in the background can be very, very helpful. Some sort of low frequency from any like YouTube channel or anything. Myers Music, MYERS, I believe it's spelled, has a lot of really cool low end frequencies. They also have a lot of themed stuff. Like they'll have like Qliphoth and like specific entities that you can. There's also like there's several channels like that. That one just happened to pop in my head. Having music, having ambience, having random noises and things like that can also be very, very, very helpful. Using stones and crystals, and I call them knickknacks. That's what my family called them growing up. Little things like this might be a knickknack. Okay, this is my pipe my pipe tamp. This was my grandfather's pipe. This is a knick-knack too. This was my grandfather's meerschaum pipe. It's pretty cool. It's got like a face. I have another one that he gave me where the person's wearing a turban, but the bowl is much bigger. So yeah, this is just, you know, when you smoke this, the tobacco gets on the edges, and you know, you want to push it down. And when you light it, sometimes it helps to have this thing with the holes in it create a more, it changes the flow. So anyway, both of these are knickknacks, and they can be used ceremoniously, especially if they're related to ancestry, I've found. Moving on. This is one of my favorite tips. Using an elixir or potion. So essentially, creating a tea with the herbs correspondent to that entity or tunnel or path. And either offering it to them, to yourself, or both. So if you were to be working with Thoth, I would perhaps make a sage tea or something like that, okay? And this can really help bring that frequency into you. It works as an offering. It works, you can even mix that tea with the incense. Was it this video? I'm losing track. You can mix the tea as the aqueous agent for your incense as well, and that works wonders. I think that's about it. If you are having trouble, this is so like judgmental and like harsh, but if you're still having trouble making a connection after these 2 videos, you might be trying too hard, or you might be white knuckling and grasping too much. Most people who can't find themselves in the Qliphoth are either so trained to ignore their repression, or they're so defined on what the Qliphoth is. Figure it out for yourself. Thanks for stopping by. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them below. Take care, and hopefully I'll see you next time.